Flash episode 16, Rogue Time. I have to give I have to give huge props to the writers for this episode because there was a huge mystery with the ending of the last episode, and it was like, all this crazy stuff happened. Cisco died. Wells revealed himself as the Reverse Flash. As Eobard Thawne, we found out like who he really is, which I feel like they slightly tied to a little bit in this episode. We got to see Barry obviously traveling through time. We got to see him kind of interact with his future self when he was, I guess in the initial timeline. I'm not even sure how to categorize it anymore. But we saw all these different storylines. Him and Iris finding out he was Flash. This stuff with Wells being busted for possibly, he killed Simon Stagg, but for someone finding out about that and things like that, like all this different stuff was revealed, and it was like, what elements are going to be kept in this new storyline? We have an alternate timeline. Obviously, things are going to be different. I think the one thing that everyone kind of knew was going to happen was Barry's just going to stop the Weather Wizard. He would know where he is, and he's going to stop him really fast. And that's exactly what happened in this episode. That was like the first thing he did. Boom, he goes, catches the guy. That's done. We have, time for a new villain, which in this case was, it was the Rogues. 3 of them now. We have Captain Cold, Heatwave, and Gold Glider is the character's name, even though they didn't give her like her villain name. That's her name. Lisa, the little sister of Captain Cold, who is played by Peyton List, I believe her name is, who used to be in the Tomorrow People. So huge props for that, because I love that show and I wish it kept going, but whatever. I like them coming in, and that was a cool, obviously they couldn't do like the same villain again. They could have, which I think actually would have been pretty cool, because his powers were pretty sweet, because he had better control over them than his brother. So he had like, like the lightning coming in and doing like his whole Sub-Zero thing and junk at the beginning of the last episode. So I really liked his powers. I thought he was actually pretty cool. I wouldn't hate seeing him come back, because it seems like he has like a plethora of moves, even though it's technically one ability. It's like, he can do hail and rain and snow and bring in lightning and shoot lightning out of his hands and stuff. Full on tidal waves, which I love the fact that they gave him the dialogue after he got busted. He was like, I'm going to bring in a giant tidal wave and destroy the whole city and stuff like that. I thought it was funny that they had him say that line where, that's obviously what he did in the last episode, and then he said it and he won't get that chance anymore. But there were a ton of cool moments in this episode that were altered, by Barry changing certain things. And what I didn't expect them to do in this episode was have Dr. Wells tell Barry, like, hey, don't tell me anything about the future. You have to do exactly what you did before. Like, that part seemed fairly simple, but, it's like he tells him all this info, and, he knows what happened. He knows that his chief was seriously injured, possibly wouldn't walk again, stuff like that. And it's like, I have to change this. I have to stop this guy. And so, the first thing he does is go out, stops the Weather Wizard, and, that was just like step 1. And then it was like the stuff. And this was like the biggest change, and it started from the simplest little thing, but him going to see Linda and breaking up with her at lunch was like the huge domino effect that really took the timeline, all out of whack. And it started with the simplest thing where he goes to see her, and it changes everything that happened in the last episode, because that was the moment, like that specific thing really is what changed so much. Like him catching the Weather Wizard, really all that changed was the stuff between, him and Iris, and obviously him going back in time. But there was a lot of stuff that actually happened because of him breaking up with Linda in this episode. And the biggest thing is that instead of Cisco dying, we saw Iris's partner die, because with him there to stop them from having that first conversation where Iris talks to her partner and he's like, I'm pretty sure that Wells killed Simon Stagg. I don't have proof, but he was there before he went missing, and he was the last person there. Why would he go see him, and this and that? And because they didn't get to have that conversation, she didn't go to Barry and give him that hunch. He didn't go back to Caitlin and Cisco wasn't, trying to answer his own question, like, how come the Reverse Flash escaped? Because that was a big thing. And they kind of went over that in this, because he didn't really get that push. They weren't talking about it like, man, how did this happen? This and that. And I thought it was really cool, and it led ultimately to Iris's partner dying. And I thought he was gonna live at first, and I thought what they were gonna do was, because Barry was just screwing up left and right, like, oh hey, I know you, but you don't know me, and then he made a huge mistake, and I guess it doesn't matter because the guy did end up dying. But when he talked to the guy and was like, hey, I know you think that Dr. Wills has something to do with Simon Stagg, but he doesn't. As soon as he did that, the first thing I thought was, that combined with the last scene of this episode, when he was getting attacked, I was thinking if he lives through this, like if he just, if Wells destroys the info and then just takes off, this guy, as an investigator, is going to be like, okay, it's got to be Barry, because Barry was the only person who randomly out of nowhere knew I had this information, and then all of a sudden I get attacked by this, super speed guy, and obviously he doesn't know who the Flash is, so, he could be like, well, it wouldn't be the Flash, it would be obviously the Reverse Flash, and it would have to be Barry. And, that's what I thought was going to happen. Then he just gets killed. Very similar to how Cisco was killed. It was actually even cooler. Well, it wasn't cool at all when Cisco died, because I actually care about Cisco. This other guy, I don't remember his name, honestly. So it was like, if I had to pick, obviously him over Cisco, it still kind of sucked. And it obviously led to like a huge thing that's going to be happening in the next episode. Hopefully, I mean, obviously the big focus is going to be for the Trickster and, Mark Hamill coming back to reprise that role from the old Flash series. But hopefully the side story is going to be Barry working with Joe and trying to figure out this stuff with Wells. And, once again, all of that was just from him going to meet Linda, really. And it's probably like the perfect example in this episode of the domino effect, where he did change so much stuff, because him doing that also without that little push for Cisco, and also him, I guess that was kind of a big push that he did. I guess there were two big domino effects, because him stopping the Weather Wizard also is actually what led to us getting to see Cisco's family and seeing him get busted and things like that. So it was actually pretty cool, because him talking about his brother's birthday party and not being able to go, I completely forgot about that. It was like, okay, well, he doesn't really like his family. It was a cool bit of information, and that was pretty much it. And then in this episode, we got to expand on that, because it's the alternate timeline now, where they don't have to work together to get the Weather Wizard, and Snart was kind of in the background during all that time. So we got to see him go to the party. We got to meet his brother and how he celebrated, and it's like the biggest deal ever. Like, they had so much stuff, it looked like it was a little kid's birthday party to me. Like, they had the giant cake and all the letters. I was like, oh, his brother is like, I thought they were really different in age when I saw all that stuff. I'm like, oh, he's like a younger kid, so he's like, the little kid is the favorite or whatever. And it's like, oh, they're the same age. I thought it caught me off guard when I saw that, and I was like, oh, that's weird. But we got to meet his brother, and then of course that led to all this stuff with him being tricked by Snart's sister Lisa, and then being tortured, like, all that stuff, crazy domino effect. And now we have the Rogues, who now know the Flash's secret identity, and I love the way they did that. And that was kind of why I love Captain Cold in this series, because they make him such a smart villain. And even Barry talks about it, like, you don't have to kill people if you're as good as you say you are. You can rob anyone and everyone, and not a single person has to die. And he's like, you're right. So, that made me love his character even more. And now he knows his secret, and he's decided, well, I have to do what I have to do, or really I have to do what I want to do. But unfortunately, I can't do it here, because you will stop me. You won't let me kill anyone else. So, I'll take leave from the city for now. And of course, I have to assume he'll come back at some point with maybe another member of the Rogues. This was actually the first episode with the Rogues, now that I think about it, where after, like the final special little scene didn't involve them getting a new member. Like, this was the first time we saw that, because each time it added on someone else. But for now, we have the three main people. We have Captain Cold, Gold Glider, and Heatwave. So it's going to be the three of them, and it'll probably just be those three when they do eventually come back into the series. But it was a cool little interaction between them, where they had to kind of come to an agreement. Like, Barry doesn't want his identity out there, but if anything happens, if he tries to, Captain Cold or the Rogues try to come after them again, him, his friends or his family, then who gives a crap? He's gonna take them down. So I thought it was a cool way for them to have a little interaction with each other. And then when they left, when Barry left, and Captain Cold's like, the Rogues, it was cute. And I thought that was a cool little scene too. But that was really sweet. Eddie, and this was the thing I thought they kind of referenced, like the Thawne sort of lineage and them being bad guys. Eddie, when he like punched Barry, was like the craziest scene to me. Like he just, the stuff with Iris, and he's like he's like, I know you have feelings for me and this and that. And I was watching that scene and I was just like, God, I think I literally threw my hands up, like he's just messing up over and over again right now. He's not paying attention to anything that Wells told him, and he's just doing whatever he wants. He's not letting certain things play out. Like some stuff you just have to let play out, and that's one of those things you cannot, you can't rush it. And he was super excited, like, he broke it off with Linda because he knew it wasn't going to work. He's like, all right, Iris has feelings for me. I got to do this. I got to do that. I got to tell her how I feel so she'll tell me how she feels. And then he just screwed it up all over again. And of course he has to get saved by Caitlin at the end with the lightning psychosis or whatever, which I thought was really funny. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, like you really weird, and said you had ESP and stuff. And I thought that was a nice little save by Caitlin. That was actually pretty awesome to me. It was a funny scene. But, him being punched by Eddie, it was a really quick little thing, and I don't know what's going to happen with Eddie in these future episodes, because there's some stuff that happened in a specific trailer. I won't mention it, but it's like a huge development for Eddie's character. And I don't know if it's villain based or it's character based, because any villain could come in and do whatever. But it's like his character could change or become a bit more prominent for the other characters and other characters' lives and things like that. So I'm not sure what's gonna happen, there. But this was definitely a cool first little step of like, oh, he's probably gonna be a bad guy or something. Like he was mad, and that was all there was to it. So I thought that was a cool little scene that we got, like a tiny little hint at Angry Eddie. So there's probably some stuff happening down the line where he kind of leads into the lineage of bad Thawnes or whatever, and that eventually gives us the Reverse Flash that we've seen so far. But it was a great episode for sure. I definitely loved it. I was really excited to see how they were gonna play some of the scenes, and I think the best scene that they had, and with Cisco having like just the worst couple of moments, like the worst 2 episodes with these storylines. They had one of the greatest kind of full circle moments in these 2 parts, because at the end of this episode, when he's deciding like, I don't deserve to be here anymore and all of that stuff, when Dr. Wells goes to talk to him, he takes him down to the room where in the last episode we saw him get killed, and it was just an amazing moment to me, like where it was the complete opposite, where instead of complete fear, it was like, I guess it wasn't the opposite. Like he was still sad in kind of both scenes, really. But it was so different, and we even got one of the same lines where Dr. Wells is like, in many ways, you show me what it's like to have a son. And I thought, like, that was like just the perfect scene to me, where we had that dialogue, and they'd ended the scene in a very crazy way where he killed Cisco, and it's in the same area and all this stuff. And then in this episode, it's sort of the saving grace of Cisco's, plot throughout the episode, and we actually see him kind of get brought back up by Wells instead of torn down and, put in this moment where it would end his character. So I thought it was just an amazing way for them to kind of go full circle with just the crazy personal scene that we got to see them have in the last episode, and have it in the same location, and have even that really big important line where it's like, instead of it being the final words, it was like the final pick me up that he needed. And it was just like amazing. I thought it was just amazing writing. I was like, they're just really smart writers, because that was just really cool how they did it in the same location and everything. So I really loved that. I'm excited for next week's episode with the Trickster coming in. Like I said, I really do hope we get to see a huge push on Barry suspecting Dr. Wells, because of course the information that he knew going through the day 2 separate times, it's like, okay, well, this is what I found out about this in the first timeline, and suddenly this guy who has information, um, poof, he's missing now in this timeline. And I was so glad I figured this out. At least I believe I figured it out the right way, because I was going to be so confused as to how it happened. With Wells going to Iris's partner, like, I can't think of that guy's name for the life of me, but for him going to that guy and killing him and stuff, I couldn't figure out at first, like, how is it that he went to him? Like, why did he randomly go to him? Because he didn't have any of this information. He just randomly showed up there, because Barry, even in the initial timeline, didn't actually go to Dr. Wells to say anything. He just defended him and, talked to Cisco and Caitlin, and they all defended him, and that was it. And in this one, he didn't say anything because he already knew, and it was just like, hey, you're wrong, and he didn't bother bringing it up to anyone else because he knew it didn't really go anywhere, so it didn't matter. And I realized in this one, in the very beginning, when Wells is like, you can mess up the timeline, he goes to the robot or program or whatever, and he's like, alert me if anything goes wrong. And I feel like even though we didn't get to see it, that has to be what happened. He was alerted, you're going to be outed, or you're at least going to have a ton of questions, and some stuff is kind of going to keep tumbling, and it's going to build up to you being busted and really being like a time traveler almost. So that's how he knew what to do, and he went and he killed the guy, and that led to Barry now suspecting, like, maybe Dr. Wells is like a villain. He found out this information, the one guy who had information out of everybody I know, and suddenly this guy ends up disappearing. So I can't wait to see how that plays out. One thing I did find weird was that the guy, not the fact that he was alone when he was at the news station, because they do newspapers, so it's not like the news, but that I thought that was the same day, and it was like this guy went missing. They have it on the news and stuff like the same day, and I was pretty sure it was already nighttime, and it was like suddenly he's missing after like 4 hours. Like, no one, they wouldn't say he's missing after like 4 hours. I thought that was kind of weird. It really stood out to me that, like, I feel like that couldn't have even been an hour, honestly, because it was already nighttime. Like, how much later could it have been where they're still just sitting around hanging out at Star Labs, So I thought that was a little weird, but that was like a tiny minor thing that ultimately doesn't matter. The guy's dead, so it's not like it's going to change when people find out he's missing. And I just can't wait to see what they do with the next episode. But I want to know what you guys thought about this one, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts, and what do you guys think about our, I guess, new timeline? Like, is there anything that you wish transferred over that didn't? Is there anything that did transfer over that you kind of wish didn't transfer over? Or, like stuff that we got to see in this episode, if it could have been changed a little bit. Maybe if they somehow combine the Rogues with the Weather Wizard. I don't know if he's ever a part of the Rogues in the storyline or anything, or the comic books, I mean. But, if there's anything that did transfer over that you didn't want to see, or anything that didn't transfer over that you did want to see, please put those down in the comment section below, and thanks for watching.